Hey, what's up guys? It's me, Jammin' Music Man, and welcome to my special new video. And in this video, I picked 5 albums that you guys should have in your music collection. Now, I dug deep into my collection of music and I chose 5 albums that crossed different genres of music, and I'm sharing with you guys, so hopefully you'll go check them out and give them a listen. But let's get this video started and let's see what 5 albums I recommend to you guys. Alright you guys, the first album I chose is for all you 70s glam rock fans. It's the debut album from the New York Dolls, and I love the New York Dolls and I love this album. And for all you fans who are interested in the music from the pre-punk days, I'm talking about the pre-punk rockers like Iggy and the Stooges, MC5, and the New York Dolls, you gotta have this in your collection. And the New York Dolls influenced, a lot of the legendary 70s punk bands like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols. And on this album you get classic tracks from the Dolls like Personality Crisis, Trash, Pills. And this album right here influenced so many musicians after that. And for some of you who didn't know, the singer of the New York Dolls, David Johansen, he later became Buster Poindexter in the 80s, and he did some acting. And another thing I recommend you guys checking out, it's a documentary about the bass player Arthur Killer Kane. The name of the documentary, it's called New York Doll: The Story of Arthur Killer Kane, and it really tells about how after the Dolls broke up, how he kind of just spent so many years on drugs, and nothing really happened with him musically. And after he tried to commit suicide, and after that he became a Mormon. And right during the filming of the documentary, it really shows how the band got reunited by with Morrissey from the Smiths. They put on a show in England, a 2-night show, the New York Dolls, back in 2004, I believe. And then after that show, like a few weeks later, Arthur Killer Kane had passed away. But you guys should really check that out. But if you guys really want to get into the New York Dolls, I will start with the debut album. And then I know they put out one more album in the 70s that didn't sell all that well. And when this album came out in 1973, it was really at the end of the whole glam rock craze. And it didn't sell a lot of records, but it influenced so many people, and I highly recommend picking it up. That's the debut album from the New York Dolls. Alright you guys, my next album I chose is another legendary New York band, and this band right here came out in the early 2000s. In 2001, right when the whole garage rock band craze was starting to take off with bands like the White Stripes, the Hives, and the Vines. The album I'm talking about is the debut album from The Strokes, Is This It? And I remember when this album came out, and when the song Last Night came out, or the video for Last Night, and how different it looked. It was really like a throwback from the 70s or the early 80s, and it looked so different from all the other rock acts at the time. And back in 2001, I'm talking about, these were the days when rap metal ruled rock music. Bands like Limp Bizkit, Korn, Kid Rock, those guys pretty much ruled rock music. And when this band came out, it was kind of a nostalgic feel. They had that, early 70s pre-punk rock kind of feel. But on the album, you get classic tracks like Last Night, Someday, Hard to Explain, and their videos were very they look like videos you would watch from the 70s, and I love that about the band, and I love their music. And it's a 5-star album, and it's one of my favorite albums from the 2000s. And I remember picking this up like back in high school. I want to say I picked this album up maybe like 2002, but I highly recommend picking it up. And that's the debut album from The Strokes, Is This It? Alright, the next album I chose, I'm taking you guys into the country genre now. And this artist right here, I've been influenced by this guy. One of the first songs I learned to play on guitar was by this guy. And this guy right here influenced so many country artists like Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson. And back in the 80s, this artist right here was a star on the rise, but he tragically died of alcohol Poisoning in 1989, and the album I'm talking about, it's his second album. It's Keith Whitley's LA to Miami, and on this album right here you get classic tracks like Miami, Miami, Homecoming 63, 10 Feet Away, and if you're a fan of country music, you gotta have this in your collection. And you know, he's one of my all-time favorites. Like I said, back in the 80s, Keith Whitley was a country star on the rise. These were the days before Garth Brooks had taken over, but Keith Whitley, he was destined to be the next big thing like a Garth Brooks, but tragically he passed away. And when he passed away, that's when Garth Brooks and Clint Black and all those guys really kind of came into country and, you know, would take over of country music in the 90s. But this album right here, LA to Miami, it's a country classic, and I highly recommend having it in your collection. And just another little tidbit, back in the summer of 2004, I actually visited Keith Whitley's grave outside of Nashville, and that's always been a special memory to me because, you know, I love this guy's music. But this album right here, it's Keith Whitley's LA to Miami, so go check it out. Alright you guys, this next album I chose it because it's one of my favorite albums by this band, and it's one of my favorite albums in the whole new wave of British heavy metal genre, or as it's sometimes called, new wobble. And when this album was released, they had gotten rid of their original singer, and they got a new singer from a little band called Samson. And if you know who I'm talking about, you get two middle fingers way up. And the band in the album I'm talking about, it's Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast. This was the album that put this band into the stratosphere. This is one of my favorite albums by this band, and one of my favorite albums in the new wave of British heavy metal genre. And if you don't know what new wobble is, you know, it was really the metal genre that took off in England back in the early 80s with bands like Motorhead, Judas Priest, Angel Witch, bands like that. You should check those bands out. But for this album, you get classic tracks like The Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills, Invaders, Children of the Damned. I love this band and I love this album. And you know, for me, I love both singers. I love both Bruce and Paul as the singers, and I don't think they made a bad album back during the 80s. And this is a true classic, and I give it two middle fingers way up. It's a 5-star classic in my opinion, and if you want to go check it out, go check it out. And you know, Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, a definite metal classic that you should have in your collection. Have I got the feeling you've been cheated? Guys, my next album I chose, it's a true punk rock classic, and I don't think punk rock would have been the same had it not been for these guys. And the band and the album I'm talking about Nevermind the Bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols, a true punk rock classic. You know, if you love the Sex Pistols, you gotta have it. If you love 70s punk or just punk in general, you gotta have this in your collection. You get classic tracks like Anarchy in the UK, God Save the Queen, 17, EMI, New York, classic Sex Pistols tracks, and classic punk rock tracks. And I know when this album was trying to get released, the Sex Pistols were bouncing around from record label to record label trying to get the album released, but nobody wanted anything to do with the band or punk rock. But the album eventually did come out, and you know, it was a big album at the time. You know, it didn't sell like Thriller copies, but it was a big album and people knew the band. And sadly, the lifespan of the band, they were only around for like 2 years back in the 70s, but you know, they influenced so many people. And I love this band. I love Johnny Rotten, Sid Vicious, all those guys in the band. But I hope you guys will think about checking it out. That's Nevermind the Bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick little top 5 albums you should have in your collection. If you like these albums and these bands, or these artists, give this video a thumbs up. In the description box below, I'll put a link to my Facebook. Follow me on there. Also, I'll put a link to my Instagram and my Twitter. Be sure to follow me on those sites. I'll follow you back. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. But just wanted to run down what albums I chose. That was Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, Punk Rock Legends, Iron Maiden, The Number of the Beast. Love this album. For all you country fans, that's Keith Whitley's LA to Miami. A true tragic loss to the country music business and to the whole music world. That's Keith Whitley's LA to Miami. The debut album from the New York Dolls. I love this band. These guys are true legends. They only needed to make one album to influence everybody. But the New York Dolls, you know, they did have more albums since then, but this is the album you definitely should have. And that final album, it's The Strokes' Is This It. I remember when this album came out back in '01, and you know, I was hooked on the band with their Last Night video, and they were so different from all the other rock bands at that time. And I love this album and I love this band. But those are your top 5 albums you should have in your collection. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up. I'm Jammin' Music Man. Keep listening to the music, and I will see you guys next time.